What's the worst random chubby you've ever gotten? Story 1. I was at a Christmas gathering with my family when I was 11 or 13. We were sitting in a circle on chairs chatting with each other. I noticed I started getting hard, but I was already sitting, so I was able to hide it pretty well. Then my cousin, who's a year younger than me, seeing there are no empty chairs, tries to sit on my lap. I didn't have any time to say much, so I hollered loudly that I needed to go to the bathroom and launched myself out of the chair while trying to face my body away from the general group as quickly as possible. Story 2. I was young, probably 13 or 14, still earning the tuck in the waistband technique. I went to the beach with my friend and his extended family. He had a 25-year-old cousin. She was gorgeous. I was sitting in the ocean trying to get rid of my flaccid, almost boner, when we decided to get out. I did the old fold into the waistband, in swim trunks. You had to be careful with this one, but it wasn't a rager, so I wasn't worried. So it was fine, nothing looked weird, until she walked over and said, "Oh wow, your chest vein is so blue." She then ran her finger down the vein on my chest. I became rock hard in the tip of my dong sword, past the waistband of my swim trunks. Full head just hanging out, they stared, and I turned red and just kind of readjusted and walked back into the ocean in shame. This sounds like the kind of trope from a romantic comedy anime or manga. Story 3. This girl is playfully bullying me, thoroughly kicking my bum and biting me. A was discovered that day. Story 4. I had a testicular exam due to a small lump that turned out to be nothing. The female doctor wasn't a 10 or anything, but the second she touched my wang dang doodle to move it out of the way, I went into full attention. The 5 minutes of her looking over my balls with a stiffy seemed to go on forever. If it makes you feel better, it has probably happened to her many times. Story 5. In a project meeting at work, texted my boss sitting across from me and explained I have a problem standing up. He got the message and began the presentation himself before I jumped in. Good boss. Shame he left. Story 6. My fiancé and I were laying in bed, and I was holding her as she cried. It was the anniversary of her dad's death. That randomly popped wood. The bad thing is, I didn't notice, too busy comforting her, till she looked up at me with tears streaming down her face and went, "Are you hard right now?" Embarrassing, but it did make her laugh, which helped her get her mind off her sadness. The term for this phenomenon is morning wood. Story 7. Not me, but one time I was sitting beside this guy, training him on his first days, and he got a very noticeable boner. Then it twitched. That last sentence sounds like a cliffhanger of a horror story. Then it twitched. Story 8. Math class in middle school. My teacher had the room set up where there are groups of 3 desks spread out across the room. I was on the right desk. 2 girls took up the middle and left desks in our group. I was getting bored and started to daydream, randomly catching some serious wood. Girls start freaking out and laughing to themselves hysterically. I pay no mind to them for what felt like 5 minutes, before I realized my pants were throbbing like a child kicking around in a mother's womb. Safe to say I asked to sit somewhere else after class. My teacher said no. Story 9. I got a boner while consoling a friend after her brother's cancer diagnosis. She had her arms around me like a python, sobbing uncontrollably. Her face was against my shoulder, tears soaking through my shirt. I'm trying to be strong, supportive, and comforting, and it's like, wow, Schwans, not now, inappropriate. Story 10. Not me, but a past coworker. We were in lifeguard training and were split out into teams. He ended up on a team with 4 female cheerleaders. He boasted about how lucky he was. The drill was a possible neck injury at the bottom of the pool rescue. He was the victim. One of the girls had to dive down and put him in essentially a reverse motorboat position and swim him to the edge of the pool where he had to be strapped down to the board. Midway through being strapped down, he pitched a tent. All the girls noticed and laughing occurred. He went to fix it, and the instructor told him that unconscious people do not move. That was the last day of lifeguarding for him. Story 11. In high school, we were pairing up for a class project. We were going boy and girl to do a marriage simulation with a fake baby. We had to carry around with us at all times. The teacher was drawing names out of a bowl to pair us up. We would then stand up and walk down the middle of the classroom together as our wedding, and then we would be a couple for a week. Well, when he was starting to draw names, I got a hard-on that would not die, and I started to panic and sweat, knowing if I called up, it would be highly visible to the class and my new wife. I was lucky enough to go second to last, and by then it had subsided to tad, but when I held hands with a girl, I was really hard, and I kind of turned off my new wife. Ended up doing pretty good in the project because it did the whole damn thing myself. My teacher, who gave us the marriage project, got busted for hitting up with students, while his wife was in chemo. Quick message before we continue. If you like our content and love listening to our stories, please press the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you'll get updated for more of our uploads. Now back to the stories. Story 12. Was about 16. Wearing jeans. Outside on our porch talking to my mom for a while. Not sure about what, just some dumb stuff. I stand up to leave and she suddenly says, "What are you hiding? What's this?" and reaches out and wait for it. She pets my wood. She instantly realizes what she's done and kinda laughs it off. I've never forgotten. Story 13. I got one while wearing a morph suit. Boy, you cannot hide a hard-on in a morph suit. Story 14. Slow dancing with my prom date. Didn't even realize it was happening until she pointed it out to me. She was cool about it, but I was so embarrassed. Story 15. Fell asleep in a religion class. To wake me up, I guess my teacher asked me to get up and collect the Bibles from all of my classmates. All I remember is holding the Bibles like a weirdo and avoiding eye contact with a couple of girls had a crush on. I learned this years later. Flex any muscle for 30 seconds and it goes away. Story 16. One point in my freshman year of college, I was both homesick and depressed, and as a result didn't feel very social. One evening we were leaving the dining hall and my roommate ran into one of his female friends. I smiled at her and kept rocking so they could talk, but she said my name, causing me to turn around. Right as I turned back around, she grabbed me in a big hug and told me I clearly needed it. Now I'm ready to let go at any time, but she just keeps on hugging me, and of course it's starting to harden. Thankfully I had enough sense to lean my hips back enough that she wasn't gonna feel it. That hug felt like an eternity, because that was the last thing I needed on my conscience at that point. It was a super sweet gesture in her part, but oh boy, I was not ready for it. Story 17. I was on an afternoon flight back when I used to travel all the time for work. I was in the middle seat, woke up to the dude on my left staring at me. Like I opened my eyes and boom, eye contact. I looked down and had to cut a diamond full masked hard-on. Look back at him and his gaze had intensified this approvingly in that half second. To my right, the well-put-together older lady started laughing and said, "Damn, what were you dreaming about?" At the time I was still kind of uptight, so it was really embarrassing, but funny. Story 18. Going through tech school to be security forces in the Air Force, military police, and we were training on handcuffing and searching that day. I was cuffed, and the fellow trainee was searching me. I look over at the female trainees doing their cuffing and searching and, well, I didn't know if it was my imagination running away with me, because we all just got out of basic training, but I swear, they were making weird noises and had their eyes closed in what seemed like pleasure. Huge raging bone, right as my partner was doing the cross-check. I really wanted to tell him to stop, but our instructors were giving instructions to the pair right next to us, so I couldn't just say, "Yo, stop, don't." All I could do was plead with my eyes as he grabs my throbbing rock-hard airman. He made eye contact with me and had this look of betrayal in his eyes, and I'm trying to apologize with my eyes. Well, from the outside in, it just looks like two dudes making deep eye contact, with one of them handcuffed and the other one with his hand in the dude's boner, which is exactly what our instructor said with his eyes when he looked at us. Good times. Story 19. I travel a lot for work, and usually when the plane is descending for landing, I'm ascending for takeoff. Story 20. First time I was in my current girlfriend's bed right after we started dating, she was sobbing after she got some really bad news. Brain. I must comfort this girl, she needs me in this time of strife. PP. We hard now, yes? Story 21. Hit a raccoon on my way home from work one night. Questioned myself for a while. Story 22. I was in chemistry class working in the lab. The weird and slightly socially awkward girl noticed and got visibly entertained. At least it made someone happy. That's more than any of us can say. Story 23. During my first breakup, it was amicable and we were both sitting down and had both been crying. She kissed me on the forehead as she was about to leave and boom, I got a hard-on. No idea why, there was absolutely nothing about that moment. It was one of the worst days of my life. The human body is so strange. Perhaps it was also your D saying goodbye. Story 24. When I was 14, my mom forced me to do a rowing class to make friends, as I had none. There was this 18-year-old beautiful Mexican girl who was the instructor. I was rowing in the front row, and she was sitting at the front of the boat. Needless to say, I raised the tent. No one else behind me could see, but she definitely knew. We just had to sit in the boat, the only one who knew, sharing the moment together. I quit rowing a few weeks later and still I have no friends. Story 25. I stood up for the walk to the front of the class. I dropped my pencil and then bent over to pick it up and proceeded to kick it about 4 feet in front of me. Then I stayed crouched and walked forward to pick it up and kicked it again about 4 feet in front of me. Rinse and repeat until I was confident. My wood had died a bit and was close to the front of the room. There was a chemistry bench that came up to my waist and I gave my presentation with a half chub. I asked my buddy if anything was weird about my presentation and he said, the presentation was fine, but that lame attempt at hiding her hard-on was awkward as hell. Story 26. I was 17 and went together with my parents to a spa. I was sitting in a jacuzzi when this hot girl came in. I instantly got hard and couldn't leave the pool for the next 30 minutes. My father was laughing his bum off because he knew what was up, and my mother was yelling at me to get out because we were leaving. There was no option or solution for how to get outside the pool without swinging my dong into everyone's faces. So I sat there awkwardly for 30 minutes, ashamed as heck. Story 27. If I sleep on the train, I always wake up with morning wood. When we arrive at my stop, I got a new longer code to make getting off the train less embarrassing. Story 28. I was dozing off in my psychology class in high school, keeping my eyes open but foregoing any type of lucid thought, and Mr. Hormones kicked in, and Mr. Woodman said, "How do you do?" Right as Mr. Woodman is playing his trumpet for me, an aide walks into the class and hands my teacher a note. The teacher calls for me to come in front of the class. Well, I couldn't really stand up without announcing that Mr. Woodman was playing a solo in my pants, so I awkwardly grabbed my large jacket off my chair behind me. Mind you, it's not cold where I live, nor was it cold in that classroom. I had it because it looked cool and kept me grossly warm in the summer months. Somehow, I decided that it would be best if I simply walked up in front of the class with my jacket in front of me and it wouldn't be weird at all. Well, it was, but Mr. Woodman kept jamming behind that lambskin curtain. Turns out I was being nominated for Winter Royalty. The class clapped for me. It was my very worst hard-on of all time, but I received applause. So your standing ovation got a standing ovation? Story 29. Not really random, but inconvenient nonetheless. In 10th grade, I was grouped with my crush and another girl, who we were both friends with, for a history project. One night we were working on the project, and my crushes, as we were getting ready to leave, cross-showed other girl goodbye and turns to me, waved and says, "Bye." I said something cringe and nice guy as like, "I hugs too." Totally fishing for some human contact. To my surprise, she actually went in for the hug. Now I don't remember if I went into the tug pre-packing a chub or if it suddenly stood to attention at the prospect of a hug. But we definitely hugged, and I was definitely praying she wouldn't feel the old yogurt slinger pressing up against her leg. Whether by luck or by my small whiner, she didn't notice a thing. We went on a date and later got married. Our 5-year wedding anniversary is coming up. Sometimes I just stop and think, if my schlong had been any bigger, she may have noticed it and maybe rightfully kicked me to the curb as a total creep. My life and family could have been totally changed at that moment. Story 30. Not me, but a close friend got his drinks bite with at a club. Hard-on hung around for hours after they left and hit the town. He kept trying to hide it, but it was super obvious. Story 31. The year was 2001. 3rd period English. My teacher was a 23-year-old first-year teacher, and she was a knockout that was wearing a particularly tight dress that day. I was a hormone-driven 16-year-old that had to give a presentation on the Odyssey, and I popped a boner about a minute before I had to get up and talk. So being the resourceful teen that I was, I discreetly secured it in the elastic waistband in my underwear. About halfway through the presentation, I made an unfortunate combo of arm movements that caused the waistband to rise ever so slightly and release the beast. It is important to remember that in the early millennium in the Midwest, loose-fitting pants were all the rage, and when you were pitching a tent, those spacious slacks, it was easy to tell how roomy or not so roomy said tent really was. But I powered through and got my A. I'm pretty sure he was a pity A, but I like to think she saw something impressive that day. Story 32. When my train used to pull into the station, I think there was a weird vibration, and I would always have what as I had to get off the train. Story 33. I was in the ICU because of dengue fever unconscious. I felt the nurse wiping my forehead. I was so weak I couldn't move, but now I'm conscious. I started getting hard, and by the time she reached my crotch area to wipe me, it was red and throbbing. I wanted to dive the fever back then. I was 12 years old. Story 34. Erection while in line for breakfast at college. Got embarrassed and only grabbed a muffin, covered boner with a muffin, and walked to where friends were sitting. Got accused of knocking up said muffin. Became the muffin man for the next 2 months. Story 35. I was getting a haircut at a professional place, which was unusual because usually I just got a buzz cut at home, but I decided I wanted an actual hairstyle this time. So I'm sitting there and this gruff-looking older dude was snipping away in my hair. And he was pretty hands-on about moving my head about. And apparently my little friend liked that and got a little excited. I was grateful for that apron. It got a lot worse when he started buzzing the hair in the back of my neck and around my ears. My ears are really sensitive, and what was just an odd semi turned into a full raging boner. Just as the dude was done, he pulled off the apron before I could even try to send my little friend back to sleep and was brushing the hair off of me when he noticed my friend was saying, "Howdy." The eye contact was the most awkward experience of my life. Long story short, I'm now bi and like having my ears touched, but I caught my own damn hair. Story 36, basic training quite a few weeks, and hadn't spanked it since I joined, but I was always so busy that I never had the energy to really worry about it. One day we were doing fire safety training, and they started to show videos of fires. One of them was an infamous stadium fire which, because of bad fire safety practices, ended up in many people losing their lives. Since it was one of the first days where I could sit down and relax for a bit, my hormones kicked in, and I had a hard wood with a strength of absolute diamonds. It almost felt as the fabric of my uniform was going to rip from the sheer strength and virility of the damn thing. Of course, this starts as soon as the video cuts to the screams and wails of people dying and screaming for help, burning alive. I was mortified. I said to myself, "No, not like this." "Yes," my dong said. He didn't care, he was making himself known, thankfully died down before I had to stand again. I was ashamed for a while, though. Story 37. Okay, so we were watching the church sermon from home because my wife was sick, laying in bed just relaxing. Well, you guys know how it is, so since we were home I decided to free the snake and not keep him trapped in my boxers. My wife notices and she now teases me about having a hard-on for Jesus. Story 38, grade 8, was at a winter camp with my class. Boys slept in one room, girls in the other. I wake up one morning and jump out of bed in my loose-fitting PJs to wake everyone up. Lo and behold, I got my first morning wood, and everyone laughed and told all the girls about my millimeter, Peter. Story 39, at the cabin at the lake with most of my extended family. There were no open chairs to my very cute cousin sat on my lap. She kept squirming and moving around, and I got painfully hard. She must have known what was happening, but she kept doing what she was doing. We never mentioned it, and I still think about it from time to time. Sweet Home, Alabama. Story 40. 7th grade, social studies. This was my peak time of unwelcome boners. I had to give a presentation with a group. I opted to hold one side of the poster up so I could face sideways and hide my wood behind it. It kinda worked. My whole group saw it though. Story 41. We were flying across the country and he was wearing sweats. He was completely passed out, and I looked over and he had a huge tent that looked like it was going to split the seams of his pants. Tried to cover it up with a magazine while I called over, in attendant for a blanket. Apparently I suck at covering up owners because she saw it and gave me a look that was somewhere between disgust and, "Lucky you," while he wanted to crawl under the seat and hide. Apparently whatever hot scenarios he was dreaming about ended because eventually it went away. I was sad that he had no memory of what he was dreaming about, and in his very cute way, he actually chided me for not taking care of his problem, while I had the chance. Story 42. I got one while teaching a class. I teach adults in intensive language exchange programs. We were doing a lesson that revolved around learning vocab about entertainment. I was walking through the class wearing slacks, then it struck. Eye level for most of my adult students who were sitting down. Students in the country came to learn English but instead learn whiner. Story 43. I was getting yelled at by the school principal when I was 16. It set off a fart bomb in my class teacher's purse, and a classmate routed me out. So there I am, receiving a dressing down for being an uncultured swine, and pop goes little me. Story 44. I remember in high school I was just walking down the hallway, and two of my female friends were just sitting on a bench, and I went to talk to them, completely unaware I'm bricked up. And almost instantly they called my out on it, and started laughing, and all I could do is run away. It was like a movie. Story 45. I wasn't going to share this originally, but now I think I have to. I was in EMT class during the practical skills test. To speed things along, some of us who had already finished ours were being used for patient assessment. Of course, I'm on trauma assessment. Patient is unconscious after some sort of event that the examiners make up and being checked for physical injuries, severe bleeding, broken bones, etc. Most of this is done by touching the patient. Well, A cute girl from my class walks in, looks at their card, and realizes that they went into the wrong examination room, and walks out. 1 minute later, a different cute girl from my class, very nervous. I crack a few jokes to calm them down, she thanks me, and the examiner says, "Just start when you're ready." The moment she began with the actual physical exam secondary assessment, full wood. There is no trying to hide it, because patient is unconscious and really shouldn't move. Unfortunately, I was fully conscious and immediately went from ghostly pale to cherry red. She also became bright red, but still managed to pass the exam. I apologized afterwards. She just chuckled a bit and thanked me for calming her down before when she was nervous about it. We hugged, each went home, and that was the last time I saw her. I hope she's doing well, but oh my God, that assessment felt like the longest 10 minutes of my life. Story 46. I've never been embarrassed about it. Maybe because I'm larger than average, but I've never been ashamed of getting one. But there was once where I was, at a club, and talking to a big luminary in the scene while getting close to an attractive woman I had just met. Well, as I was new to the scene and hadn't experimented with different outfits, I didn't realize my outfit, which was perfectly fine for, when I was flaccid, was definitely not big enough to contain me when hard. I'm having a conversation with the luminary, and then, when the girl I was next to me ran her hand on my chest, boom, it just popped out the side. He looked down and just sighed and shook his head. I wasn't particularly embarrassed, but I did realize it was inappropriate, and I did apologize. Story 47. Once in 10th grade, I was with my group mates rehearsing our lines for our performance task. Basically, every student is grouped with those from different classes in our grade to make a play about Christmas. Out of nowhere, I suddenly started getting hard while I was rehearsing my lines, so I tried to hide it. As if it couldn't get any worse, 2 of the guys in our group noticed and let everyone know. Couldn't look anyone in the eye until after we were done. Story 48. I had a heart attack about 5 years ago, and my daughter moved back home to look out for me. Don't get weird. I was prescribed some meds that had some side effects. My daughter is a fitness fanatic, and after she gets back from her morning run, she does yoga, then goes to the gym usually. Anyway, I woke up one morning with morning wood compounded with my meds screwing with me, and walk in while she's in a very interesting pose. She looks up from between her legs and says, "Oh, Daddy," and starts laughing, but I'm so drucked out of my mind. All I could think of was bathroom. Later that day, she's fixed me lunch and sits next to me and tells me what happened. 'Cause she knows I was to druck it up, to have paid attention, and tells me she's never going to let me live that down. Story 49. This girl I've known for 4 years, who is a very close friend, sits next to me in class. I have recently started to grow an attraction to her, and one time, out of nowhere, I was just looking at her. Because I zone out a lot and I end up looking at random people stuff. When I snapped out of it, I had a raging boner. Felt kinda bad. Didn't tell her. I don't think she wants to know. Story 50. I was in a 3-week orienteering camp, and I was watching a movie with some peepee in a different group. There wasn't enough room in the couch, so I sat on the floor, and we were watching a scene when I got hard, so I sat in the hug your knees position, but someone noticed. He walked up to me and tried to force my legs away from my body after he asked me, and I suspiciously said no, in a slow way. Not really that embarrassing, but thought I'd share it. Story 51. I was 15, we had gym class, and we were spilt into 4 groups. Our team had just won an obstacle. We sat down sweaty on the scene to spectate the other groups. The girl in our group sat right beside me. She had tight sport shorts on, and she went down to itch her left foot. The texture from the sound of her itching her sock made me get a boner. I tried to hide it and she didn't notice it. I ended walking away from the scene, still hiding the boner. I didn't know where I was going before I spotted my water bottle and went and grabbed it. She looked confused on me if something was wrong. Story 52. I was in geography class in 5th grade and I randomly got an extremely hard boner. Suddenly the teacher asked me to put a map out on the blackboard. We had like a nail for hanging the maps on it, and I'd just say no, in complete panic. After her surprised expression, I said how I was too short to put it up. She told me to get a chair, to what I responded with, "I don't know which map is for what." Although I knew they were marked, I was playing dumb, hoping she would ask another student. She then said they were marked. I just said okay, and proceeded to carry the chair with me to the maps, and then to the board in front of me, in a weird position to cover up my boner. It got half flaccid while I was getting to the board, so I just pushed the chair against my penis to adjust its position. I had basically a perfect score in geography and other subjects, so I wonder what the teacher thought I was doing. Story 53. Me and the teacher knew each other before she became a teacher and are good friends. Last year during my English class, the teachers had to show the students what to do when they were attacked, and then asked if a student wanted to volunteer. Then after no one volunteered, she asked me if I would mind helping her with it. I told her no problem, then walked in front of the class for the demonstration. She told me to throw a punch, so I did, and then she proceeded to bring me to the ground. Just like that, she found out that I was somewhat a masochist, so we both kinda got flustered. That's it. Story 54. Not mine, from a friend. So basically, we're on a trip to the beach in 7th grade, and the tables we ate at folded up. And someone accidentally picked him up by the nuts with the table. Basically, teachers rushed him to the hospital because he was definitely hurt. He had to get an ultrasound on his balls, and he said his nurse was a 10-10 and he got a boner while she's examining him. He said she got super red, but it was hilarious to us. Story 55. I'm not a frequent nightclub patron, but one night a new friend dragged me out to the Electric Cowboy. We find a couple girls to dance with, go out to the floor, and they start rubbing their on us as girls at clubs are apparently wont to do. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was not prepared for this and got hard immediately. We finished the song, but she kept leaning over laughing to her friend, and I was really embarrassed. I guess it's not a random boner, but definitely unwanted. I don't get how people dance like that without at least getting a semi. Story 56. So I was sitting in back of a car carrying a light backpack with nothing but a few papers in it. A relatively stranger female was sitting beside me with her thighs touching mine. Naturally, my decided it's showtime, but acting in time, I put my bag on it. A few moments later, I watched in horror as my bag slowly started to elevate. Had to lean forward and put my elbows on it in a very awkward position. Had her looking strangely at me. Story 57. I was staying at my grandma's place. It was morning and we were headed out. And of course I had morning wood. I got dressed and noticed that I was pitching a tent on the left side of my pants and was hoping it would go unnoticed. As we gathered near the front door ready to head out, my uncle asked if I had my cell phone. I said yes and touched my pants where my phone was. Big mistake. My grandmother and my uncle obviously saw my hard-on because right then my uncle decided to get his phone and place it near his crotch and hanging out to the left. Cue the awkward laugh. We left right after that. Story 58. I was 14. It was the first time I had ever gotten to go to a girlfriend's house. I had brought over some games and stuff, and we were playing them, having some fun, and she just pins me down and starts making out with me out of nowhere. Keep in mind, this was my first kiss too. Suddenly, her mom calls for me, and I've got a raging boner going, so I grab the backpack I brought my games in and just hold it in front of me the whole time I go downstairs to speak to her mom. Just put yourself in that situation, you'll understand how awkward it is. She asked what I wanted for dinner. We ended up having homemade fries, which my girlfriend at the time attempted to do some weird food kiss thing with. Didn't work out too well. Maybe it wasn't a random boner, more of a badly timed one. Story 59. I was about 12 and was about to start a race in swim meet. Swim outfits were the good old spandex bikini type. I remember sitting in the locker rooms hoping it would go away, but it didn't. Had to stand up on that swim block with my arms at my side. To this day, I feel that embarrassment. Story 60. Got one in class, desks were very close to each other. A girl I had a crush on sat a few desks ahead of me. I'm a big guy, so I have to walk sideways down the aisle between the desks. Well, as you probably guessed, my boner hit the back of her shoulder, rested on the top of her shoulder while I shuffled my feet, walking sideways, and then slid off her shoulder as I walked past. As I walked back down the aisle, we didn't make contact, but we were cool again that weekend. Never brought it up until now. Story 61. I was in college around 20. Went to the club with this girl I was interested in. Super hot, slender, really nice girl. Our group of friends goes to the club and she's wearing skin-tight dress. She proceeds to grind her boot against me, but she is really pressing her boot to my crouch. I tried to reposition the boner from her right, but checked to the middle, where Kay thought there was more room so she wouldn't feel the boner as much, and so maybe I could get away with this. But as soon as I reposition the wang, she feels it. Must have poked her right in the cooch, 'cause she ran away and sat. So standing there, why a bug boner, I sat right next to her by the dance floor and it was so awkward. Story 62. Back when I was a teen, maybe about 16, 17, bunch of friends all decided to make a Taco Bell run on night. There was about 5 of us and we all had to pile into the only car we had, a Toyota Corolla. We were all leaving when my buddy's dad said, "Take you, sister, to get food too." He groaned but said whatever. She was, I would say, about 2 years younger than me, so about 14, 15 or so. So all 6 of us piled into the car, and his sister decided to sit on my lap. For the first mile or so, she was on my thigh, and my brain just was doing math as I did not want to get a stiffy because she was my buddy's sister. This did not help. I was full mast in my shorts. After about 3 miles, she swung herself right into my lap and right onto my boner. The bumps in the road and the movement of the car, her tush was right on my boner and I was fighting hard to hold back. We finally pull into the Taco Bell about 10 minutes later and we all get out. I say, "I need to tie my shoelaces, be right there." They all went in and I calmed down. Problem was, this all happened again on the way home. Dude 2 times. I think she suspected something. Story 63. In 7th grade, I went to the Alabama State Science Fair. I was nominated and won a special award for ingenuity. I put 2 halves of an eggshell on a plate and tested how much weight they could hold based on their slightly different shape. I had to go on stage in front of 800 people to accept the plaque and take pictures. About 30 seconds before I was called up, I got a hard on the size of, well, a 7th grader's. It wasn't fun to walk up there while wearing dress slacks. That's double win. My congratulations. For award, of course. Story 64. This was years ago, and my ex-girlfriend invited me to her Christian church party. She took me to this small room and introduced me to her fellow Christians' brothers and sisters. After that, we were alone, and I decided to ask her to sit down on my lap so I can talk to her. I was getting a little frisky and wanting to tell her I miss her, and then all of the sudden, my center suddenly raised up out of nowhere. I was a little embarrassed because she felt that hard stick sticking up her butt. She didn't say anything, but she stood up and tapped my shoulder to quit joking around. Maybe because we are at church and things like this shouldn't happen. After she told me this, I was still sitting down because of my boner won't go away. And then, the children came over to us with their smiling face and giggling. I didn't know my ex is a Christian teacher and they are her students. Anyway, I was stuck at that chair for a couple of minutes while she's teaching them about God. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this next video. The YouTube algorithm really thinks you like it.